Hello and welcome to class. Today we're talking about Chapter 1, Lesson 6, Midpoint and Distance in the Coordinate Plane. So first we're going to start our warm-up, and I want you to graph these 2 points on this coordinate plane. We're going to find CD. That is talking about the distance of the line segment CD. Then I want you to find the coordinate of the midpoint of CD, so what would be the midpoint? And then finally simplify this expression right here. Where's my friend? Where's my friend? Oh, here's Pause Dragon. Remind you to pause your device, work out those problems. When you get done, press play, and we will go over them. All right, see you in a bit. All right, we are back. Let's go ahead and do the first one and see how you did. So graph -2, 3. So this is the x and this is the y, right? So we have -1, -2, +3, 1, 2, 3 would be right there, and we just label it as A. And then B, 1, 0, this is the x, this is the y, so we go over here, the x, this is the x-axis, y-axis, right? So the x is here, 1, and then y is 0, so it's just right here. This is B. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and find CD. So remember on the distance, what was the distance before we, it was the difference, the absolute value. So CD is the absolute value of 2 minus a negative, so 2 minus a -6. All right, it was the absolute value of that. So CD is a negative and a negative equal a positive. So we have 2 plus 6, which is just the absolute value of 8. And CD, the absolute value of 8 is just 8. So the distance of CD is 8. All right, perfect. We're going to find the midpoint of CD now. And so to find the midpoint, we're really going to get into a formula and how you do it. We're just going to kind of do this old school where I'm just going to, we got to find the point in the middle, so I'm just going to, kind of take one from this side, take one from that side, take another one from that side, take another one from this side, another one, and then another one, and there we are right there at -2. So -2 would be the midpoint. So the midpoint of CD, why can't I spell? Midpoint of CD is equal to -2. Maybe some of you know that if you just add the 2 values and divide by 2, then that will also give you the midpoint. So we could have found it by going -6 plus 2, and then you divide by 2, and that shows you the halfway distance. So -6 plus 2 is going to equal -4 divided by 2, and then -4 divided by 2 is just -2. And so that's just, another way of finding the midpoint. All right, let's go to simplifying this expression. So we have a radical sign here, a square root symbol, and we have stuff inside. So we need to go ahead and simplify this inside first. So it looks like we have 3 minus a -1, and all of that is squared, and then we're taking the square root of all that. Okay, cool. So first thing we're going to do is simplify this 3 minus a -1. So again, we have 2 negatives, and those 2 negatives equal a positive. So what we're doing is 3 plus 1 squared, right? And 3 plus 1 is 4. So that's just 4 squared. And if you remember, a square root and a squared, they're inverses of each other, so they cancel each other out. So sometimes what I like to call it, have you ever played that game where it's called Fruit Ninja, and the fruit's coming, and then you try to, you slice the fruit like a ninja, like with some samurai sword or something, and then it gets sliced? Well, that's what I like to do. I like to get my little samurai sword that's my pen, and every time there's a square root and a squared, I just Fruit Ninja it. And basically, that's just representing that these two cancel each other out, and what's left is 4. So there you go. Perfect. Boom, 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 boom. Let's talk about a coordinate plane. So a coordinate plane is a plane. Coordinate plane is a plane that is divided into 4 regions by a horizontal line, which we call the x-axis. Okay, and a vertical line called the y-axis. So let's go ahead and make our own lovely coordinate plane right here. So I'm going to go like this for a coordinate plane. Boom-de-boom. That is my y-axis. Okay, and then I'm going to put my x-axis here. And there we have my lovely x-axis. All right, and it is divided into 4 regions, 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are actually called quadrants. So this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And then what it says is the location or coordinates of a point are given by an ordered pair x, y. All right, so let's talk about those ordered pairs. So whenever we have, this is like a number line. So on the x-axis, this is like 1, 2, 3, like all of the positive numbers. And then over here for the x-axis, this is where all the negative numbers are. So -1, -2, -3, -4, so on. The y-axis is the same. When you go from, this is called the origin, right? This is the origin. Okay. And that means it's 0, 0. That means the x is 0 and the y is 0. So up here is the positive. So this is 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then down here are the negative numbers. -1, -2, -3. All right, cool. So let's talk about all the ordered pairs. So they're saying that the ordered pairs are x, y. Well, whenever you're in quadrant 1, the x is always going to be positive and the y is always going to be positive. So every point in this quadrant, like this point right here, what's that? That is going to be 1, 2. The x is 1, the y is 2. Notice how this is positive and this is positive. Let's look at another one right here. I'm going to make this 4. The x is 4 and the y is 1, right? So again, positive, positive. So that means that every point in here is going to have a positive x and it's going to have a positive y. Okay, every point in quadrant 1 has a positive x and a positive y. Okay, what about quadrant 2 over here? Let's look at a point. What do we see? This point right here, oh, I was doing green, wasn't I? Green, is the x is -2 and the y is 1. So it looks like the x is negative and the y is positive. What about, let's try this one right here. What is this? Well, the x is -1 and then the y is 3. So again, the x value is negative and the y value is positive, which means all of the points, all of them in this quadrant, that's quadrant 2, all of the x values are going to be negative and all the y values are going to be positive for every point in that quadrant. Let's go down to quadrant 3. Okay, so for quadrant 3, any of these points, like this one right here, the x is going to be -2 and the y is actually going to be -2. So for this one, all of the x's and all of the y's are negative for any point in here. So every point is going to be, it's going to have a negative x and it's going to have a negative y. And then finally, let's go over here to quadrant 4. So let's look at a point like this one right here. What is this point? Well, the x is 3 and the y is -3. So it looks like the x is positive, but the y is negative. And that's what the rule is for any point in quadrant 4. The x is positive and the y is negative. All right. So that's basically just a real quick review on the coordinate plane, the x and the y-axis, the origin, the quadrants 1, 2, 3, and 4, and all the different points that fall in between there. All right. So moving on, we're going to talk about the midpoint formula because that's what this is about. This section it's about. It's about the midpoint. So that's going to be a formula. All right. So we're going to talk about the midpoint formula and the distance formula, which is going to be later in this section, in the coordinate plane, which is right here, which we just talked about. All right. So we talked about the midpoint here, but this was just on a number line. So now we're going to talk about the midpoint formula, which can happen in the coordinate plane. So you could have all different types of, slanted lines and such, and then you can figure out what the midpoint is of those. So we're going to talk about how to do that. So what this says is the midpoint M of line segment AB with the endpoints y, and A, x1, y1, and B, x2, y2 is found by this formula. So I'm going to draw a picture so you see what we're talking about here. So I'm just going to draw a, okay, first let's go ahead and draw a coordinate plane just to put it in context here. All right, so there we have our coordinate plane. And then we were to draw a line like this, let's just say something like this, where this is our A and this is our B. Okay, the coordinates of A are x1, y1. And these are, it's important that that's subscript. So when you have superscript, that's like x squared, right? When you have subscript, superscript is, it's a little number and it's higher, okay? It has meaning. Subscript is a little number and it's lower, and it also has meaning. So this is subscript. And the reason why I use subscript is because, okay, let's go here. I'm going to use a different color. Let's say I didn't call this x1, y1. Let's say I just called this x and y. And then over here I called b, x and y. Okay? And I was like, hey, tell me what x is. And then, well, which one is it? Are you talking about this one or this one? Right? It's unclear. Or tell me what y is. Well, are you talking about this y or that y? So this little x1, y1 is more of like a labeling, because this is x2, y2. But if I say, hey, tell me what y2 is, then you can be like, oh, it's right here. It's this number. If I say, hey, what's x1? Then you know, oh, it's right there. So x1, y1, it's just a labeling for saying, hey, this is the first point that we're looking at, and this is the second point we're looking at. So it's a labeling system, all right? So what we're going to do is look at the formula of how to find the midpoint of this line segment. So I'm going to kind of change this formula a little bit, and I'm going to say the midpoint is xy. Okay, that is the midpoint. So somewhere in the middle here, there's going to be a point, and that's going to be the midpoint, and we're going to call that xy. Okay? And this is, we find the midpoint by doing this. x1 plus x2. So you take both of those x values, you add them together, and you divide it by 2, which is kind of like the average, right? Whenever you find two, you have two numbers and you add them and divide it by 2, you're finding the average of those numbers. And the average is kind of like the same thing as the midpoint. So it's like you're finding the average of the x values, and then you're finding the average of the y values, which is basically the same thing as a midpoint. So, whoops, sorry about that. So average of the x values, take the two x values, you add them up, and you divide by 2. And then the average of the y values, you take the two y values, add them up, divide by 2, boom, and then you'll have the midpoint. So this is the formula. This really needs to be on a flashcard. We are going to use this bad boy, so it's not going anywhere. So this is a flashcard. Flashcard. Midpoint formula. Go ahead and memorize it. There's a lot of stuff you have to memorize, so you have to go over and just go over them with your brain. When you do the problems, we're going to write the midpoint formula on every single problem, every single example problem. That's going to help you internalize it. The more you internalize this information, the easier it all gets. So let's look at our first example. So it says right here, example 1, finding the coordinates of a midpoint. So we're going to find the coordinates of the midpoint of PQ with endpoints P and Q. All right, cool. So I am going to go ahead and label these. P is going to be x1. This is going to be y1. This is going to be x2. This is going to be y2. Perfect. I'm going to write down my midpoint formula, which is the, I think I'm going to write it down over here. Yeah. So the midpoint, xy, that's our midpoint point, midpoint point, all right. This is the point of our midpoint, is found by taking the average of the x values, so x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, the average of the y values, y1 plus y2, all divided by 2. Then we just substitute in the values. So our midpoint, this is our midpoint formula, equals, oops, sorry. What does it equal? This equals the x1, which is -8, plus x2, which is negative 2, divided by 2, comma, y1 is 3, plus y2 is 7, all divided by 2. And then we just simplify this. So the midpoint xy is equal to negative 8 plus negative 2. They're both negative, so we just add them together. And we get negative 10 divided by 2, comma, 3 plus 7 is 10. 10 divided by 2, or 10 over 2. And so the midpoint equals negative 10 divided by 2 is just negative 5. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So there's our midpoint. Our midpoint is negative 5, 5. So this is our x part, and that is our y part. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and try this one more time. But actually, I want to give you a chance to try this one on your own. So use this. I want you to write the formula. Okay, I want you to define your terms. This is how we're defining your terms. Okay, so on those points, write x1, y1, x2, y2. Write the formula, substitute in, show your work like this. Okay, I want you to try it here on Check It Out example 1. Where's my friend? Oh, there's my friend, the pause dragon. Remind you to pause your device. Go ahead and work that problem out. When you get done, press play, and we will talk about it in a little bit. All right, see you in a bit. All right, we're back. Let's go ahead and go for this. Okay, so we have to find the coordinates of the midpoint of EF with endpoints, boom and boom. Okay, so this is going to be my x1, this is going to be my y1, this is going to be my x2, this is going to be my y2. I'm going to write the wonderful, magnificent midpoint formula, which is M. xy is equal to the average of x1 plus x2, all divided by 2, the average of the x values, and the average of the y values. We're going to add those up and divide by 2. All right, then we substitute in. Okay, we can do that. We can do that. Rewriting this, my x1 is negative 2, plus my x2 is 5, all over 2, comma, because we end up with an ordered pair, which is kind of cool. Y1 is 3, plus y2 is negative 3, all over 2. Okay, then we're just going to simplify this. Equals negative 2 plus 5, that would be 3, divided by 2, 3 over 2, comma, 3 plus negative 3, that's 0 over 2, and there we have our answer. So it would be right here, so the midpoint of xy would be, we could say that it's 3 over 2, 0, or we could change that to a mixed number. And we would have, you know, how many times is 2 going to 3? 1 time, and there's 1 left over. So it would be 1 1/2 over 0. Or we know that 1/2 is the same thing as 0.5. So we could write our answer like this, 1.50. So all 3 of these are correct. Okay, so if you got this correct, awesome job. If you didn't, or if you mislabeled any of these, or you didn't write the original equation, go ahead and fill those in for your point into your notes. To get full credit on your notes, you need to have all of this information included. So I'll give you a chance to do that, and then we will see you in a little bit for example 2.